Back from the Peach Bowl, just back from a splattering, courtesy of Quick Trip, fueled our way down there, fueled our way out to Glendale, fueled our way to Atlanta and back. Appreciate Quick Trip, big time friends of the program and sponsors slash presenting partners of the Fall Don't Lie Tour. Yeah, man, we were down there. We saw it all. I feel like I could have to be deposed as a witness after what just happened to Oregon and happened in front of God and us and everyone. Can you believe we got a Sarah McLachlan special in the college football playoff semifinal? It happened in Atlanta. I'm just back from Atlanta, just back from the Peach Bowl. Indiana, what was this final score? 56 to 22 is the final. I don't even know what to say. They've got back-to-back splatterings in the college football playoff. That's not supposed to happen. What Indiana's doing, period, is not supposed to happen. So we're way down the road of understanding the significance of the moment, understanding the significance of what Kurt Signetti's doing. Seems like a stack of pancakes. Like every week, you just have to kind of re-explain and reconvince yourself you really are seeing what your eyes think you're seeing. And tonight, uh, it was like 80-20 in that building, at least 80-20 Indiana fans. And you build up, build up, build up, and first play Oregon has from scrimmage, pick six. Now, I'm not going to say that that was the beginning of the end because I mean Oregon came back to tie the game, but it was just this like solid red blinking light in your face. It's probably going to be another Indiana night because there are many paths, I guess, at the outset where I could have seen Oregon win. None of them involved turning the ball over one time for a score, much less what were they, -3 turnovers, 21 points off turnovers. So I mean, Indiana's defense is nasty. This was the first time I've gotten to see them in person this year, by the way. And I can safely tell you, I can emphatically tell you, it checks out. Everything they've been saying about Indiana out there. Yeah, it was true. So I don't know that I've seen numbers like this. I'm just looking at a sheet in front of me or a digital sheet in front of me. 11 of 14 on third down is insane. This is completely insane. And playing the kind of defense they play was insane. Now, I got to be honest with you. I was joking around, which 80% of you can sense, and then another 20% can't sense it. But I was joking around that after Mendoza threw that, or not Mendoza, Mendoza didn't throw any pick sixes, but after Dante Moore threw that pick six, he comes right back out and just marched Oregon down the field. What was that? That was a 14 play, 75-yard drive, 7.5 minutes. I thought to myself, man, maybe it's game on. Maybe that's it. And then just, man, Indiana, they keep on leaning. They keep on leaning. I'm looking at their drive chart right now. Touchdown, punt, touchdown, 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 punt, punt, touchdown, touchdown, half, end of game, whatever. Yeah, that's the end of game. That's not half. Just relentless. Absolutely relentless. So, first thing that I think comes to mind is yes, Kurt Signetti. I don't think you have to define how special what he's doing is right now. I don't think you have to do it because I don't think you can properly do it. You don't, um, like you don't have to have vast historical context. You don't have to be like a great sports writer that's encapsulating everything with the written word in the moment. Sometimes it's okay to just soak it in. Indiana fans sure are. And I'm speaking generically, like I'm not an Indiana fan. I'm observing what Indiana's doing, and I'm like drinking it all in. It feels like I'm drinking from a fire hose right now. But the point I'm trying to make is let history decide that. 7 years from now, when you're sitting around with your buddies, you're talking about the Indiana 2025/26 run, you'll have a little more historical context. Just enjoy it right now. You guys are 4 quarters away. You're one win away from a national championship. Just, it's a story the likes of which we thought we'd never see.
Hey, do me one favor right here. Look down. Are you subscribed to the channel? If you are, thank you. If you're not, please click subscribe. It helps us keep the show free and free of corporate interference. All right, that's it for me. Back to the clip.
Everything that was needed for an avalanche, everything that was needed for a splattering happened. Because as much as the defense came to play, Fernando Mendoza's making throw after throw after throw. He had 5 touchdowns total tonight. I don't know what else to say, man. And I know from the NFL draft side of things, like a lot of those guys are asking Dante Moore or Fernando Mendoza, Dante or Fernando Mendoza. Uh, that dude made some throws, and it's so crazy when you're watching it in person. Not that there was a doubt in my mind, but when you're watching it in person, the those kind of guys that are going to go on to play a long time on Sunday, they just stand out. They just jump off the field. And he jumps off the field. But yet again, you've got a situation where when you theoretically have that caliber of quarterback in college football, a lot of times there's reason for everyone to kind of look at him and wait for him to carry you. And that's never been Indiana all year. They ran it for 185 tonight. You had, let's just see, you had seven different receivers get involved. Defense, of course, gets involved. Special teams, great as usual. So just unbelievable, unbelievable all around job. It's not the kind of breakdown where you really diagnose things and like you really forensically analyze the box score because it's just a blowout. I mean, it was a splattering before halftime. Didn't think I'd be tweeting that before halftime, but I did. I got to also say, I'm going to talk about the Indiana fans in a second. Let me talk about Oregon here. There's going to be a lot of stuff talked about with Dan Lanning. I said going in, he's in very much a James Franklin spot because Dan has won a couple of playoff games here, but he was going to go into a situation where it was the first time where he was facing the team where theoretically maybe he's supposed to lose. And that reminded me of James Franklin in Penn State last year. James Franklin's got this tag above his head. He can't win the big game. He can't win the big game. And so then they made the playoff last year. Didn't win their conference, but they made the playoff, just like Oregon this year. And they played SMU at home, beat them, just like Oregon did with JMU. Then Penn State goes out to, I think, the Fiesta Bowl and they beat Boise, just like Oregon went to Miami. They beat Texas Tech, but hey, they were supposed to. I'm not telling you this was my opinion, but I know that this was the overwhelming sentiment publicly. Then what does Penn State do? They run up on Notre Dame. Notre Dame beats them. And even after two playoff wins, James Franklin is still told you hadn't won the big game. And I said, if Dan doesn't beat Indiana, he's still going to be told he hadn't won the big game. And we weren't even out of halftime yet before folks were firing off those tweets. And I, I've already told you how I feel about the guy. I think he's one of the best coaches in college football. Um, that doesn't mean he's perfect. So you've got yet another learning opportunity here. You never, ever, ever know what the future holds for a guy. The thing I've been saying about Dan for a while is you got to understand, like, how do you define greatness? How are you guys defining that? Most people would say Saban is one of, if not the best to ever do it. Lanning is like a decade younger right now than Saban was when he won his first national championship. Just people's minds are totally warped, I think, sometimes when they're talking about Dan. You can drag him for losing games in blowout fashion like this 2 years in a row in the playoff. You can do that. I'll stand back and I'll watch you swing at him like a pinata. Because if you ask me, this was a very, very embarrassing loss. Like all that can be true. But then if you want to take the added step of saying, oh man, this guy is fill in the blank, any adjective you want. I bet there are some pretty harsh ones being used tonight. That's where you're going to lose me. That's just where you're going to lose me. There are two things that can be true there. Maybe he's still got a long ways to go, but also he's still pretty good at what he does. I just think that's where Dan Lanning is. I don't want to sound like I'm making a fraction of an excuse for this. Like there are very few things that are going to get in Indiana's way this side of the NFL right now. There are very few teams that are going to get in their way, it seems, between them and the death march they're on to a national championship. But I'm looking at a 56-22 final score here. I don't know how different it would have been if Lanning's coaching staff was fully in and weren't on their way different directions going to become head coaches, and congrats to them. But it kind of sucks that that stuff has to overlap, just like with Ole Miss. It sucks that that stuff has to overlap with, the most important stretch or one of the most important stretches in your program's history. You only get so many shots to win a national championship. So I don't know what the difference would have been there. No one cares to make excuses for Dan Lanning. The old Kirby Smart quote, there's no crying on the yacht. No one cares. They won't care. And, so Oregon, they'll circle back, like they'll be in the conversation every year. So you're not talking about someone who had their one shot. No, this was this year's shot, and they'll have other shots in the coming years. I thought they had a good season, but no one's going to really remember it that way because of how it ended here. And that's the breaks. That's the trade-off for playing in a tournament like this. I want to say this though. Okay, I haven't been around Indiana fans much in my life. Indiana fans are amazing. Indiana fans are awesome. I could not speak any more highly of you guys. I was around you in Atlanta today, and in the hotel early this morning, this afternoon, going over to the stadium. It looked like someone kicked over an ant bed full of Indiana fans and they just spilled out into Atlanta. There were like 50 Indiana fans for every one Oregon fan. Just an unbelievable showing. And then you get like the game of your lives. You could not have scripted it any better. So that had to be an awesome experience. But look, I pretty famously, like regrettably famously, have gone against Indiana a few times this year. So I wouldn't have blamed Indiana folks if they gave it to me a little bit walking around. And I had so many interactions with Indiana fans. And hey, I got bad news for you guys. They're the nicest people on the face of the earth. So I was pleasantly surprised because I just expected to get more grief. I mean, maybe I should have gotten more. Maybe you guys were a little too easy, to be honest with you. But all seriousness, great experience, man. Great experience. You guys ought to be proud of yourselves. I know you're proud of your football program, but also I think people, including me, you're learning a lot about Indiana. Like most of us didn't know how big the alumni base was. Most people just did not know if the fire ever got lit under Indiana football, how quickly it would grow. Because it went from a matchstick to a bonfire like that. I mean, you are talking about obviously a memorable couple of seasons that we've had here, but you're talking about kickstarting a football program for years to come. I mean, when I was growing up, I was obviously growing up. I was a very little kid when Bobby Bowden had Florida State rolling, and I remember when the olds would sit around and tell me, "Hey, Joshua, Florida State, they're a mega power now, but what if we told you before you were born Florida State was nothing?" I mean, they weren't even a blip on the radar screen of college football, and Bobby Bowden made them a power. And I remember thinking, that's cool, but that stuff doesn't happen anymore. It's happening right now. It's happening right here in 2025/26. I just didn't think it could happen. I thought the landscape of college athletics and college football was just kind of set, and the big boys were always going to be the big boys, and then you're going to have your middle tier, and then you're going to have your also rans, and there's very little changing from tier to tier. And Indiana just they completely carpet bombed that entire notion. So they're on to Miami to play for a national championship. I was texting back and forth with our friends at FanDuel about what the opening number was, which was Indiana minus 7.5. And I said, out of curiosity, Indiana versus Miami, week one, neutral field, what would you have made the number? And they said that would have been Miami minus 6.5. So we're looking at about a two touchdown swing in odds making perception. I would even say a little more because technically you're going to bake in maybe a point or so of home field that otherwise you wouldn't have baked in on a neutral field because they're playing the game in Miami. But I got to be real with you. I wouldn't be shocked at all if there were more Indiana fans than Miami fans down there. Is that a challenge to Miami fans? Of course it is. Prove me wrong. But if what I witnessed on the streets of Atlanta and in Mercedes-Benz Stadium today/tonight is any indication, you're going to have a tough time proving those folks wrong. You're going to have a tough time outspending those folks. So it's a whole new world for both teams now, Miami and Indiana. But man, what an emphatic season of results here. Just the latest one tonight, 56-22. Congrats to Kurt Signetti and the guys there. And they're off to Miami to do what? To play for a national championship.